In today's video, we're going to be diving in to the upcoming pattern. We have our onset of extremely cold air that is basically here now. It's going to worsen through the day tomorrow and into Wednesday, depending on how far east or west you are. But for the central states, we're pretty much already peaking. Eastern states is going to continue to get worse here over the coming 24-36 hours. So expect more and more cold on the way. Outside of that, we also have our deep south snowstorm, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, maybe even Virginia. We have started to see models creep northward with some of the snowfall, giving hope to South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, especially compared to yesterday's video. So there is some good news to give you guys. I still think it is really, really sketchy to say the least. I'm a little concerned because there is models like the Canadian in particular, which we're not going to show today, but it basically shows nothing for South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. You know my famous saying, if a model shows it, it is possible. So there is still that remaining possibility that there is hardly anything for these areas. But we have models showing, 4-6 inches for some of these areas in Eastern Carolina, even 2 to 4 for my neck of the woods, and then we have some showing none. And we're basically within 24 hours now of the onset of snowfall for these eastern areas. Pretty crazy stuff. With that being said, we also expect a pattern change at some point here during late January into early February, where we will see warmer move in. It's not going to be like a total torch, it doesn't look like at any point, but definitely warmer than things have been. So we're going to be discussing that as well. And really, we start out talking about that with the 6 to 10 day outlook, which is for the 26th through 30th. So 6 days from now is the start of this. I get some comments sometimes where people are like, why did it just show cold yesterday and now warm today? And it's because it's moving forward every day. We lost the 25th and we gained the 30th. The previous was the 25th through the 29th. Now it's the 26th through the 30th. So that should be evolving. We see this evolve every day. Cold in the west, which we call a negative PNA. And we see the warmth move into the east as a result of this. We see it building throughout the north central, south central, north central, and even some of the southeast here as well. Near normal for a lot of the east. We've talked about this for a few days, but I see the upcoming pattern as a revolving door pattern where it's not strictly cold or warm for this 4-day period. It's going to be some cold, some warmth. We're going to see it warm up and then a cold front comes through and then it warms up again and then a cold front comes through. It's going to be that revolving door type of pattern. The precipitation will be on the increase as we see lower pressure throughout a lot of these areas, warmer temperatures, more humidity, overall more moisture. So above average precipitation, kind of weird. It looks a lot like an El Nino precipitation pattern. Obviously, we are in a La Nina. We see the southwest, south central, southeast seeing above, with the northwest and north central seeing below. This is classic El Nino look. Pretty interesting. 8 to 14 day outlook is when they start to say, hey, the warmth might be completely moving into the east by the 28th of January into the 3rd of February timeframe with neutral conditions out west. Pretty interesting as well. Precipitation still on the rise for the east and south central with drier in the west, but the northwest does start to get a little bit wetter, so maybe moving a little bit more towards something that is more reminiscent of a La Nina overall. Now, we do have officially the past 20 days of January. So the first 2/3 of the month, and we see far below average temperatures have taken place across all of these areas. And we expect 5 or so more days of this colder temperatures. Maybe 3 or 4 would be a better bet. So when we look at the full, 31 days in January, the full 31 day averages, it's going to be far below average because this is going to actually deepen. It's going to get even colder over the coming days. So very, very cold for January, warmer along the west overall for the month. Let's take a look at the I almost said ENSO model, European model here. I'm a little rambling today. It's the national championship day. You guys know I like Ohio State quite a bit, so I am a little bit extra excited today. As we take a look at the day today, I'm going to move us forward a couple of hours because we do see by 1 a.m. tonight, the snowfall is starting for Texas and Louisiana. So again, here we have certainty, very heavy snowfall between Houston and kind of the southern Louisiana area. But there's massive question marks for this eastern area of the forecast, which is crazy. But I bet once we see this initialize, we will get more information. But typically our low pressure center locations is the most important factor, but we have so much high pressure in these areas. These are going to be actually what controls the forecast. And we have seen these high pressure systems trend further southwest over time, and this is allowing for the storm to kind of creep up the southeast coast a little more, which is what is increasing the amounts for this area. We talked about it yesterday, but these high pressure systems moving east or west is what would control the forecast, and we have seen that westerly movement with them, and the storm has crept right in, as I said would happen. So basically going according to what we've noted is the possibilities. By the time we're looking at tomorrow afternoon, we are going to see Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, these southern areas getting crushed. Houston could end up with 6 inches plus of snowfall. Absolutely crazy stuff for them. This truly is a historic storm. I think that for a lot of these areas, this is like a once in every 100-year type snow system. So truly crazy stuff. I've gotten so many comments about how I only talk about the South anymore, but really it's not my fault, it's the weather's fault, because there's nothing going on in the north. If there was more active weather in the north, that's where my discussion would be. I'm always focused on the major weather events happening. I don't want to pop up on here and talk about how cold and dry it is in the Northeast. I don't think many people care. I think everybody pretty much knows that's happening anyway, but these are the types of things where there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of discussion points to be had. So yes, after this storm is done, it's likely we're going to start talking more about the north and the west and all that once those areas get active. As we move overnight Tuesday, this is going to be 10 p.m. on Tuesday. We see the snowfall perhaps starting on the eastern end of things. Again, this is today's 12Z European model run. Let me move it back a run. Let me move us to the 6Z run. Okay, that's the 6Z run. Here's the 0Z run from last night. Here's the 18Z run from the night before, or the day before. So yesterday. And here's the 12Z run from yesterday. So here's the 12Z run from yesterday to the 12Z run today. And we've seen a significant kind of northerly tick, obviously. It's going to become even more evident as we move this forward just a couple of notches here. Maybe something like this is... I'll go with this. So this is going to be 4 a.m. on Wednesday. And let's move back a run. We see a southerly movement. Here's the 0Z run, another southerly tick. 18Z, kind of a similar look to that 0Z, and then the 12Z a little bit further south. And when I jump it all the way back, 24 hours of runs, we see a pretty significant tilt change and northerly change there that puts North Carolina and portions of Eastern Virginia much more in the crosshairs of potential impacts. And there could still be movement over the next 12, 24 hours as the storm's just getting going. So it could move back south, but these northerly trends are classic. And I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see these northerly ticks, but anything's possible. So I don't want to act like it's locked into anything right now, because again, I hate having this much uncertainty this close to a storm, but we do have a lot of uncertainty. Really, the biggest story after this is cold. Friday, Saturday, cold. We start to see some warm-ups in the east, and we even get this kind of Gulf deep south system here moving through. Maybe a snowfall threat for areas of the mid-Atlantic. I would eyeball that, so Monday the 27th, but it's not looking like a huge snow event as of now. It could transpire into something a little bit more impactful, though. Then we end up with a brief cool down after that warmer pattern for Tuesday the 28th. By Wednesday, already warmed back up. Another little cold blast trying to move in from the north for that kind of early weekend-ish time frame, Thursday, Friday here. Then we get a little bit of a snow system for areas of the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, up into the Northeast, a coastal system here between Saturday the 1st, Sunday the 2nd. This is very far out, so take it with a grain of salt. Then we get this massive warm-up for the 4th. This is going to be Tuesday of February. Huge trough in the west, huge ridge in the east. So this would bring very unseasonably warm temperatures here in the east, and very unseasonably cold temperatures out west, a complete reverse of what we've been used to seeing over the past, probably month and a half. This would enable severe weather and thunderstorms underneath here for these Midwest areas, these deep south areas, and it would allow for snowfall to take place more across the upper Midwest and northern plains. So an interesting shakeup in the areas seeing some of the impacts here. Again, this is when we would start talking more about these areas. It is far out though, so take it with a grain of salt, but it could be indicative of us seeing a pattern like this. What this means is this model sees things about the upcoming pattern that would make it think this is going to happen. And the specific date isn't important. The specific location isn't important, but something like this could transpire. There's strong reason to believe it. Now, GFS model, again, also trended north over the last 12 or so hours. We see snowfall as far north as maybe the Delmarva. Areas of Virginia, North Carolina back on for snowfall in the GFS as well. So basically every model is trended north except the Canadian models, as I mentioned. The Canadian model is known for being a little wonky. That's the CMC model. The RGEM model, which is, for those of you that know your weather models, the GFS has the NAM, which is like the short range, higher resolution American model. The Canadian model has the RGEM model, which is like the Canadians' NAM model. And that model is historically pretty good at times, and that one shows nearly nothing for South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. It's much further south, much lighter with the snowfall. So that's basically the two main models that are not on board at all right now, but almost every other model that I know of has trended north and westward. So we'll see if those Canadian models hop on board or not, but pretty interesting to say the least. That storm comes to an end. We get a little coastal system perhaps Thursday, Friday. Right now showing eastern North Carolina getting some snowfall. We have seen these models kind of trend back and forth with different looks for that one, but there is possibilities of snowfall. I would say be on the lookout if you're in this area for any sort of changes, because this is pretty close to a hit, and a lot of these areas could have snowfall already on the ground. So any additional snowfall that hits, if there's already snow on the ground, will accumulate immediately. So could see a little bit of additions here for Thursday into Friday, just 24 hours after that first storm. Then we end up with, again, a revolving door pattern, a little warmer with some snowfall in the mid-Atlantic, but warming, another little cold blast, warming, and then cooling again with a clipper system moving through the northern plains, Midwest, Ohio Valley, into the mid-Atlantic and Northeast here by the beginning of February timeframe. And we really don't end up with anything similar looking to the European model with the crazy western trough and the huge eastern ridge. We don't see that here on this GFS model whatsoever, so that's worth noting. But the European model does show it. The GFS model does not. Could flip-flop a little bit, but that could be a sign that we do have warmer times ahead in the east for the early February timeframe. Also colder and more active for the western and central states during that time, if we saw that as well. So it's definitely notable, and we'll be keeping track of it over the coming days. Total precipitation, definitely there is precipitation in these areas, a little above average maybe for some of these areas as well, but nothing too overwhelming. The west is taking an uptick, but probably all almost below average still. So let's take a look at it, and sure enough, these areas in here a little bit above average. Also the Rockies kind of in through the northern plains, pretty above average, but mostly below average for the entire nation. Here is your snowfall map from the European model, and we get a lot out west compared to what we've been seeing. Also the mid-Atlantic and kind of northeast areas as we get those kind of rising mid-Atlantic systems perhaps in just maybe a little less than a week or a week from now. And then as we zoom into the east, we see our very imminent system. I'll move this back actually so we can see just that. And again, we're looking at a solid 2 to 4, maybe even 4 inches plus in some of these areas across the Outer Banks and kind of just eastern North Carolina in general. So a little bit of an uptick from what we saw yesterday, which was this. So we have seen a pretty substantial change over the past 24 hours to get from this to this, especially if you move along kind of like the northeastern North Carolina area and southeastern Virginia. There's been a pretty considerable change. When we look at the GFS model's total snowfall, the west is a little less overwhelming with the snowfall, a little more underwhelming. We do see that clipper system come through, as well as a couple of mid-Atlantic snow systems that bring a good amount through these areas compared to what we've been seeing from the models. I want to zoom us into the east and take a look at this system. So let's move back in time a little bit. And again, you end up with a solid 2 to 4 throughout most of these blue areas and dark gray areas. And then we get a solid 6 to 10, perhaps, in this eastern North Carolina area, which, again, we're going to move this back 20, or we can only go back 3 model runs, but still, when we move back to the 0Z, here we go. This was the 0Z just last night, actually. So 0Z run just last night from the GFS model. Then look at today's 12Z run. That is a dramatic change for South Carolina, North Carolina, and southeastern Virginia to happen over 12 hours. So if this trend continues, imagine another 12 hours forward. If we saw equal change, that purple could be more widespread throughout eastern North Carolina, maybe even some blues and purples trying to flirt with eastern Virginia. I wish that would happen. You know, it's hard to say if it will or won't, but I absolutely wish that I could see snowfall just tomorrow night. It's going to be a nail biter, and certainly been some interesting changes happening here just over the past 12 to 24 hours, as we've noted, and there's still a good 12, 24 hours of trends that could still occur. So really moving in a positive direction for those of you hoping for snowfall in these areas. As we take a look at the temperatures, we're obviously like frigid right now, and it's going to stay that way for Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday, Saturday, maybe a little bit. And then we start to get the yellows and lighter blues, which is going to be near normal. We get another cold blast here and then another warm up, and that one's a lot more dramatic with, again, the very cold air out west that the GFS model is not going to show, but you can tell it's kind of more back and forth. We've been stuck in almost purely cold here for most of January and most of December. So to get a revolving door pattern is going to be a big change here for the upcoming pattern, if that is what we see. And yeah, overall could lead to some very interesting impacts. GFS model, very cold, you know, through the week. Into Sunday even, we get colder air. Then we start to get some yellows and reds mixing in with another cold blast, and then a warm up, and then a cold blast, and then a warm up. So you've got this really back and forth stuff going on, which again is going to allow for more low pressure systems to move around the jet stream, which is much more fluctuating at this point. It's going up and down and going crazy, which is going to allow for more major storms to occur. I don't see this as a completely snowless look. There's enough cold air at times to where if we get low pressure systems moving in, we could cash in on snowfall at multiple points, just as these models have shown today. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just going to be a lot less cold overall than what we have been seeing. With all that being said, huge updates coming tomorrow for the current storm that we're talking about. Over the coming days, huge updates regarding the upcoming pattern as we kind of just lock in everything and figure out what's going to be happening. So be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.